Discover the incredible heartwarming journey of a billionaire who found love with a woman in crisis. Ethan Caldwell stepped off the bus and felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. The twinkling lights of his Appalachian hometown glimmered in the fading twilight, a stark contrast to the imposing skyscrapers that loomed over his life in New York. He hadn't seen these worn-down streets in over a decade, yet faint whispers of childhood laughter echoed in his mind. But instead of joy, he felt lost, an outsider in a world where he used to belong. As he walked through the familiar neighborhood, homes painted in pastel colors surrounded him. The scent of cornbread and the sound of laughter spilled from porches. They were once comforting, but now they clawed at his heart with memories of hard work and community values that felt foreign. Ethan's father had passed away, leaving a void and a complicated legacy as a local farmer. Guilt gnawed at him, leaving a tightness in his chest. That's when he saw her. Clara, standing in front of the community center, her fiery red hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She was a schoolteacher, full of passion and determination, rallying the townsfolk to fight against budget cuts that threatened their school. And oh, how she radiated strength. It was as if she carried the town's hope on her shoulders. "Ethan?" she asked, her brows knitting together, unsure if the man before her was who she thought he was. "It's me," he replied, forcing a smile. As they talked, he felt an electric connection. They discussed heartfelt stories of their childhood, laughter bubbling over old jokes. Clara was the heart of the town, and Ethan was drawn to her like a moth to a flame, but as their friendship blossomed, a storm brewed on the horizon. News hit that the factory, a crucial source of income for many families, was on the edge of collapse. Panic set in. As tensions rose in the town, Clara's belief in Ethan faded. Could he truly understand the struggle of those who worked for every penny? Or would he remain a privileged observer, forever disconnected? Ethan stood in the town square that day, feeling the weight of countless eyes on him. The air crackled with uncertainty. What would it mean for him to take a stand? Would sacrificing some of his wealth truly bridge the chasm between him and the community? His heart raced, each heartbeat echoing the choices he had to make. "Ethan, are you really with us?" Clara's voice trembled, her eyes searching his face for answers. There was fear there, and hope. Yet, doubt lingered between them, thick as the humid southern air. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ethan could feel the pull of his past, the values that once defined him. He thought of Clara, standing brave against the storm for their town. But as he reflected on his riches, how could he ever fit back in? How could wealth ever mesh with the simple grit of the land he'd come from? With the future of the community and his budding relationship hanging in the balance, the question loomed large: would Ethan embrace his roots and fight for the people who raised him, or would fear guide his choices, leaving him standing alone as a billionaire amongst the simple joys of home? The weight of the decision hung heavily, a quiet storm brewing within him, waiting for the moment to break. Ethan took a deep breath and glanced around the square. His friends from childhood, now faces steeped in worry and uncertainty, looked to him for guidance. It was a heavy moment, like standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind rushing in his ears, waiting for him to leap. He recalled how they all depended on one another back then, how laughter had filled these streets, and how community had meant everything. "I need to do something," he mumbled under his breath, the words almost lost in the chaos around him. Clara was watching, her eyes a whirlwind of emotions: fear, hope, determination. Suddenly, he knew he had to act. "Everyone!" Ethan called, raising his voice, trying to project confidence he didn't quite feel. Heads turned, and the murmurs faded. "I know I haven't been around, and maybe I've lost touch with what matters, but I want to help. I want to be part of this fight." The crowd was quiet for a heartbeat, and then Clara stepped forward. But how, Ethan? You've lived on the other side for so long. Do you really know what we're up against? Her voice shook slightly, that fire he had admired now felt like a challenge. I may have lived away, but I know this place matters. People matter, he replied with urgency. I can rally support, find investors, maybe even create a fundraising campaign. If we work together, I believe we can save the factory and our town. The voices in the crowd began to pick up again, a mixture of skepticism and faded hope. But Ethan felt something shift inside him, the flicker of determination ignited by Clara's piercing gaze. If he could face the turbulence of his past, then maybe he could redefine his future. As he kept talking, he started to share his vision. He spoke of community events, bake sales, and social media campaigns to raise awareness. While Ethan laid out his ideas, he noticed Clara's expression soften bit by bit. Still, he could see she was holding back. He needed her support, her belief in him to make this work. Clara, I know we can do this together, he pleaded. Tell me you believe we can make a change. For a moment, there was silence, as she weighed his words. Around them, people were murmuring, processing the shift in Ethan's tone. Then she took a step closer, her eyes resolute. All right. I'm in, but you have to really commit, Ethan. No backing down. His heart raced at her acceptance, but the shadow of doubt was still lurking. Her courage bolstered his resolve, but would he truly follow through? Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the fragile moment. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from his team in New York. The news about his father's estate was coming to a head. Money was soon to be involved. His breath caught in his throat. Was this the moment he could finally reconcile his past wealth with a future he wanted? What? Ethan, what is it? Clara asked, her voice pulling him back. He hesitated. Could this news both help and complicate his commitment? Not knowing what his next step would be, he looked up at Clara, determination flooding back. With everything on the line, a decision loomed heavier than before. Would Ethan uncover the true potential in both his legacy and his love for Clara in time to save the community they cherished together? His heart ached with anticipation as he whispered to himself, "Let us make it count." Ethan pocketed his phone and gazed into Clara's eyes, feeling a swirl of anxious energy surrounding them. The weight of his father's estate loomed, but right now, it felt secondary to the urgency of the moment. The town around him was alive with whispered conversations, but within their small bubble, silence spoke volumes. Clara's look held challenge, layered with concern and a hint of hope. "Let us meet at the diner," she suggested, breaking the gaze as she turned to the crowd. "We can brainstorm some ideas for this campaign." There was a softness in her voice, an underlying trust that made him want to rise to the occasion, to be the man he never fully embraced being. As they walked, the familiar streets unfolded like a well-worn map, memories flooding back with every step. The scent of frying burgers and fresh coffee wafted through the air as they approached the diner, a place that had been a hub of laughter and late-night confessions in their youth. Inside, the familiar jingle of the bell above the door welcomed them, and the warmth enveloped Ethan like a hug from an old friend. He scanned the diner, finding the usual characters: Mr. Dawson scrolling through his newspaper, Mary serving coffee with a smile that could brighten anyone's day. It was these moments that flickered with gentle nostalgia, grounding him in a world that he once thought he could escape. Clara slid into a booth, and Ethan followed suit, suddenly feeling nervous under the weight of their shared mission. "Okay, let us go for it," she said, pen poised over a napkin, ready to chalk out a plan. "Start with what we need. What do you have in mind?" He leaned in, heart racing. "We need community support, but also outside investment. We have to show them that this isn't just about saving a factory, it's about preserving our home. I could reach out to some old contacts, maybe jog a few memories about coming back into the fold." Clara nodded, scribbling ideas down, but a shadow crossed her face. "Ethan, it has to be more than just money. We need their hearts. People feel like they've been forgotten. We need to remind them that they matter, that they have a voice. Her words cut deeper than he expected. He had spent years running from the roots that once pulled at him. He felt the core of their shared history settle in his chest, igniting a fierce sense of responsibility. You're right. Let us plan an event, something big that brings everyone together. We can leverage social media, make it a festival of sorts. Food, music, stories, testimonies of people who worked at the factory. As his excitement grew, Clara smiled, but he noticed the fatigue behind her eyes. You're so full of life, she said, her tone softening. But remember, you don't have to do this alone. It's a big lift. Maybe we could use volunteers from the community. Of course, Ethan replied quickly, but beneath the surface, worry crept in. What if their efforts fell flat? A flicker of doubt snuck in like an unwelcome intruder. The diner felt alive around them, with chatter and laughter echoing in the background, but for Nathan and Clara, the weight of their mission kept their voices hushed. What would it take to mobilize their friends and neighbors who had wrapped themselves in despair? As she wrote down potential dates for the festival, he felt a surge of warmth. The fire in Clara's eyes lit a path, coaxing the resolve he thought had long been lost. This was about more than just a factory, it was about connection, love, and the urgency to reclaim what they had lost. But just as optimism filled the air, the undeniable truth of his family estate loomed larger in Ethan's mind. What if the solutions he found only deepened the divide between him and this town? How could he balance the future he wanted with the past he struggled to shake off? Clara, he began, hesitation coloring his voice, there's something I haven't told you about my father's estate. It could change everything. She looked up, eyes wide with curiosity and concern. What revelations would emerge from his past, and how would they shape their future? Everything hung in the balance, and as the weight of his words filled the space, he knew they were on the brink of something transforming, something that could ignite hope or spawn heartache. Would he have the courage to share it all? Ethan could feel the air thicken around him as he stared into Clara's eyes, her expression a blend of anticipation and concern. Something pivotal was about to unfold, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. He drew in a deep breath, his heart pounding, and finally spoke, "My father, he left behind more than just the estate. There are restrictions. Complications." Clara's brow furrowed, the candlelight casting soft shadows across her face. Complications? What kind? He hesitated, weighing how much to divulge. He was involved in some shady deals. There's a pending investigation. If I take possession of the estate, it could tie me to everything he did and everyone he hurt. Clara's gaze softened, a whirlwind of empathy washing over her features. Ethan, I'm so sorry. That must be weighing heavily on you. It's not just the estate, it's what comes with it. Guilt, shame, and fear of what it could mean for us, for this town. A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken fears and dreams. A piece of his past threatened to entangle everything they were trying to build. But what if you took a stand? Clara leaned forward, her voice firm. What if you turn this liability into something positive? Show the town that you're not your father, that you're different. Ethan felt a flicker of hope at her words. The prospect of redemption began to light up the darkness surrounding him. Could he transform this burden into a catalyst for change? Organizing that festival could be a start, he replied, his voice steadier than before. If I can show the community that I'm here for them, not just for my inheritance, maybe it could shift perspectives. Maybe I could shift my own. Exactly. Clara's smile returned, brightening the atmosphere. You'd be reclaiming your place here. Not as your father's son, but as Ethan, a man who cares about his roots. He nodded slowly, feeling the weight begin to lift. Yeah. It's not just about saving the factory. It's about restoring trust. I need to put my heart on the line. Just then, a lively group of friends entered the diner, laughter spilling into the space like music. Their carefree chatter was a stark contrast to the weighty conversation they just shared. Ethan felt a swell of nostalgic warmth in his chest. This was his home among these familiar faces, who had seen him at his best and worst. They were the heartbeat of the town, and he wanted to be part of that rhythm again. As he met Clara's gaze, he saw the same determination mirrored in her expression. Together, they could be the bridge to rekindle hope. They could revitalize the community, breathing new life into dreams long forgotten. "Let us outline a strategy," Clara suggested, glancing at the napkin filling with sketches and ideas. "We can start reaching out to the people, gauge their support. We'll need to be transparent, show them they can trust you." Trust. That's a big word, Ethan said, the enormity of it all creeping back slightly. He was aware that with each step forward, he could face resentment from those who still held on to their bitterness towards his family. "Trust is earned, Ethan. You just need to start this journey as a friend, not a foe," Clara assured, a gentle smile easing his doubts. With the anticipation of the festival coursing through his veins, Ethan felt a flicker of something pure possibility. Could they truly pull this off? With every challenge, every hesitancy, he felt Clara's presence grounding him. As they discussed timelines and ideas, laughter filled the air around them. The chatter of the diner faded into the background as both of them became immersed in their vision. However, a sudden hush fell over the diner as Mr. Dawson suddenly shouted, "Ethan! Clara! You need to see this." They turned as the whole room turned to the glowing screen of a TV mounted in the corner, broadcasting breaking news. A familiar name flashed across the screen, and Ethan's stomach dropped. What had his family done now? Could this be the flashpoint that tipped their hopes into chaos? Ethan's heart raced again, unsure if he was ready for what was unfolding. Would this news bring about the very fate he feared, or could it serve as the turning point they desperately needed? Ethan's heart raced as he turned his gaze toward the television. The screen illuminated his face with a harsh glow, contrasting sharply with the warm ambience of the diner. Clara's hand found his, a gentle squeeze that steadied him in the whirlwind of uncertainty. The news anchor's voice droned on, but Ethan couldn't focus on the words. All he could see was his father's name scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It felt like the walls of the diner were closing in, and for a moment, it was hard to breathe. "Ethan." Clara's voice was gentle, almost a whisper. "What does this mean?" He swallowed hard, struggling to process the implications. "I don't know, Clara. I can't believe it. Something big must have happened." The diner was silent, the laughter and chit-chat replaced by an ominous hush as everyone leaned closer to the screen. Eyes were glued to the unfolding drama, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that all those faces held a judgment he wasn't ready to confront. As the reporter continued, he could barely make out the details: accusations of fraud, shady dealings connected to the estate he was trying to reclaim. The very words felt like daggers piercing through his hopes of mending his broken past. What if this news destroyed the community's chance to see him as someone new? "Ethan, listen," Clara's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "You still have a choice. This doesn't define you. But it could." He shot back, frustration spilling out before he could contain it. "What happened in my father's world is finally catching up to me. Maybe I'm just as guilty." Clara shook her head, the earnestness in her eyes melting his anger. "You're not him. Remember what you said. You want to change things. This could be your chance to show everyone that you care." Ethan felt a flicker of belief ignite within him. "Maybe, but how do I even begin to communicate that? Where do I start?" Before she could respond, Mr. Dawson interrupted, his voice unsteady. "Ethan, the town needs you now more than ever. We've always known your father had his demons, but you can help us heal." The rest of the diner began murmuring in agreement, that hope he'd felt earlier resurfacing amidst the chaos. It was strange he hadn't expected to see such solidarity. Could this same town, which once looked upon his family with disdain, rally around him like this? "Reaching out to people, it's not just about the festival anymore," he murmured, feeling the ideas begin to take shape in his mind. The festival could serve as a symbol, a show of unity against the shadows of the past. He could stand at the forefront, be the face of transformation. What if we host a community meeting? Clara suggested, her excitement palpable again. Bring everyone together, share your vision. Let them see who you truly are. Ethan nodded slowly, the surge of anxiety giving way to a new kind of energy. I think that's a good idea. I need to explain my intentions clearly and earn their trust. Just as hope began to swell, the screen flickered again, cutting back to the anchor, whose expression had shifted to a more serious tone. In related news, sources suggest this investigation could lead to further consequences for the estate, but there's always room for change. A community can overcome its past. Ethan exchanged a glance with Clara, realization settling in. If they faced this head-on, perhaps they could alter the narrative together. With every beating pulse, a determination replaced his earlier fears. This wasn't just about legality or inheritance anymore, it was about a future. Let us do this, he said, his voice steady. I'll set a date for the meeting. And I'll make sure everyone knows I'm here for the long haul. But as plans began to form in their minds, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What dark secrets from his father's past lingered in the shadows? Would these revelations come back to haunt him in the quest for redemption? As the weight of the impending challenges began to settle in, he found Clara's hand grasping his tighter, a small comfort. Against the tidal wave of uncertainty ahead. Would love and hope be enough to steer him and the community through the storm? The clock was ticking, and the clock was about to strike. What would be waiting on the other side of this fight? Ethan felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he and Clara stepped out of the diner. The air was electric, crackling with a mix of anxiety and determination. Clara's hand was still firmly tucked in his, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this. As they walked, Ethan could see the familiar streets of his childhood, each one a reminder of the life he would have to confront. Are you sure about this? Clara asked as they reached the intersection. Her eyes searched his, looking for any sign of doubt. I have to be, he replied, trying to muster confidence. It's about more than just the estate and my father's mistakes. It's about showing this town who I really am. The plan was to gather everyone in the community center next week. He wanted to space it out, allow people time to process the news, but Clara insisted they act quickly while the feelings were fresh. You'll want them to see that you're taking charge, that you're going to fight for what's right, she had said with a fire in her voice that made it difficult for him to disagree. As they walked, Ethan felt the weight of every gaze that followed him. Whispers fluttered around them. At first, it made him cringe. He could almost hear the questions. Was he like his father? Did he have the same greedy blood running through his veins? But Clara's unwavering grip snapped him back. Ignore them, she said. Just focus on what you believe. He took a deep breath, deciding to turn the whispers into fuel. This was his moment. As he reached the square, he spotted a few familiar faces, people he'd grown up with, people who knew him before the name Ethan Lancaster came with a shadow. It might not be easy, but he owed it to them and to himself to at least try. Let's split up, he said when they reached a tiny park at the edge of town. Talk to people, let them know we're serious about the meeting. If I can get even a few folks on board, it'll help. Clara nodded, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I'll head over to the bakery, Mrs. Hargrove always knows everyone. You take the library, Jess will be there for sure. They parted ways, and Ethan plunged into conversations, heart racing with excitement but shadowed by uncertainty. He approached Mrs. Zephyr, a woman with soft gray hair and the warmest smile, delivering her mail for years when he worked as a summer intern. Ethan, dear, she exclaimed as he approached her. It's good to see you. Heard what's going on? The news has everyone buzzing. Yeah, it's a lot, he said, swallowing hard. But I'm planning a community meeting. I want to rebuild trust. I want to show everyone I'm not my father. Her eyes softened, then narrowed slightly. It's going to be tough, Ethan. People have long memories. Trust me, I know. But it's worth a shot. I want to make things right, he replied, hoping she could see the sincerity in his voice. Then I'll be there, she reassured him. Word spread as he talked to more people. Some were cautious, others supportive, but the overall vibe was shifting. It felt like a movement was brewing beneath the surface. Each conversation strengthened his resolve, even as doubt crept back in. When he finally met up with Clara, she was glowing. I spoke to Mrs. Hargrove, and she's spreading the word. And guess what? Jess said she'll bring her book club. That's a big deal. Ethan smiled, the warmth of hope flooding back. This might actually work. We can turn this thing around. Just then, a commotion caught his attention. A small crowd was gathering near the town fountain, voices rising, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Let's check it out, Clara suggested, gripping his arm as they walked towards the crowd. As they drew closer, Ethan's heart sank. In the middle of the crowd stood a television reporter, her camera crew recording as she delivered a live update, a follow-up on his family's fall from grace. Ethan froze, the reality of his situation crashing down again. What more was there to uncover? He squeezed Clara's hand tighter as she stood by him, her presence a steadfast reminder that they would face this together. Ethan. The reporter called out, her eyes locking onto him. Can you provide a statement regarding your father's alleged criminal activity? He took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that could make or break everything he was trying to accomplish. I'll talk. I promise, but first I need my community to trust that I'm here for them. Would this be the moment that unraveled everything? Or would it be the turning point he desperately needed? The air was thick with tension and uncertainty, the eyes of the town searching his face for answers as the clock wound down on his quest for redemption. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, the chaos swirling around him like a storm. Clara's hand was firm in his, giving him strength amid the uncertainty. The reporter's voice cut through the noise, and Ethan felt the weight of every set of eyes trained on him, some filled with skepticism, others with a hint of hopeful curiosity. Ethan, please. The reporter pressed, her tone urgent, almost predatory. Your father's actions have left a stain on this town. What will you do to change that narrative? He took another deep breath. I'm not my father, he said clearly, his voice rising above the murmurs. I'm here to show you that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm asking for a chance to prove that I want to stand with you together. We can build this community back up. A few people in the crowd exchanged glances, their expressions difficult to read. Then, out of nowhere, someone shouted, "Why should we believe you?" It was a voice Ethan recognized, a classmate who kept his distance since the scandal broke. Because I'm willing to step into the sunlight and own my mistakes and his, Ethan replied, his voice gaining traction. Because I know the weight of this name, and I want to redefine it. I want to be part of something good again. The air shifted slightly. Clara's grip on his hand tightened, and he could feel the pulse of hope rising within him, pushing back the shadows of doubt. Then start by being honest, another voice piped up from the back. What did your father do? Ethan hesitated, the questions swirling like leaves on a windy day. It felt like opening a wound that had barely healed. He hurt people, he said at last, his heart heavy. He acted in his own interest and not yours. I want to follow that path. Join me in showing the world we can do differently. The crowd simmered with a mix of outrage and curiosity, each person wrestling with their own feelings. There was silence, then a voice called out. We all know you're not your dad. But trust is earned. How? It was the pivotal question. He had to make it count. Let us hold that community meeting. I'll share everything. My plans, my heart, and my vision for us. You'll see I'm committed. A younger man stepped forward, a supportive glint in his eye. We need more than words. We need to know you care. I do care, Ethan asserted, feeling emotion rise. I grew up in these streets, in these homes. I may have lost my way, but I'm back, and I want to help make things right. If you'll allow me the chance, I'll show you. One by one, heads nodded, some eyes softened, and he saw a flicker of hope dancing in the crowd. "Fine, Scout," the young man said, as laughter rippled through the crowd at the old nickname. "Let us see what you've got." The tension began to dissipate as Clara smiled, relief flooding through her. Could it be? "All right, we'll come," a woman in front said. "Your meeting better deliver." Ethan felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. I promise, I won't let you down." As he exchanged glances with Clara, her eyes shining with pride, he realized he had taken the first step towards earning their trust, but this was just the beginning. One fearless decision had changed the tide, and the promise of what was to come ignited his spirit like never before, but before he could celebrate these small victories, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. Pulling it out, his heart sank. A news alert flashed across the screen: Lancaster inheritance under federal investigation. All eyes turned to him, and the hope that had just blossomed now felt fragile again. Ethan could sense the doubt creeping back, the whispers stirring like a storm. Was this the moment everything fell apart? Would he be able to push through the weight of his family's legacy? "Ethan?" Clara whispered, concern bubbling in her voice that he locked eyes with her, feeling the urgency of the moment. "We need to address this together." With the crowd's gaze heavy on him once more, Ethan felt the full weight of the challenge ahead. Could he stand firm against the tide of his family's past? And what would it mean for him and for Clara if he couldn't? Ethan swallowed hard, the taste of uncertainty metallic on his tongue. Faces stared back at him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. Each furrowed brow felt like a whisper of doubt, a reminder that nothing was easy. Could he really change the narrative? "I know this is hard for all of you," he began, his voice trembling slightly under the weight of vulnerability. "Trust me, I'm terrified too. But this news, it doesn't change who I want to be. It's just another challenge to face head-on." Silence enveloped the crowd as they processed his words. Clara stepped a little closer to him, her presence grounding. "You've already taken a step, Ethan. Just keep moving forward." The reporter, sensing the shift, pressed her advantage. "How do you plan to handle this investigation? Will it affect your ability to make these changes you're promising?" Ethan's heartbeat quickened, but he refused to let panic take the reins. "That's a fair question," he replied, searching the crowd for supportive eyes. "I'm working with my lawyers and doing everything I can to clear my family's name. But it can also serve as a lesson for me." He paused, taking a breath to let the moment sink in. "I want to build a future based on honesty and transparency, and I can't do that while hiding from the past." A deep breath rippled through the crowd, some heads nodding in cautious acceptance. "You really mean that," the supportive young man said, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. "It's refreshing to hear someone own up to their truth." Another voice piped up from the back. "But if this investigation affects you, how will you lead us? You've got to be in a good place to help others." Ethan felt the weight again, pressing and heavy. He glanced at Clara, her eyes steady and unyielding. "I will lead by example," he said, determination threading through his words. "Even when things get tough, I'll strive to be honest and genuine. If I can be vulnerable in front of you, then we can build this community together brick by brick." The murmurs in the crowd began to subside. He could sense a flicker of restoration, a dawn of common ground emerging from the shadows. But he also understood that words alone wouldn't be enough. The community's wounds were deep, his father's legacy an anchor dragging him down. The reporter, still sharp, adjusted her stance. "What if the investigation comes up with new allegations? Will you still stand here, promising change?" Ethan squared his shoulders. "Every single day. I won't run from this. You deserve a leader who stands firm, someone who's upfront no matter the challenge." A woman with a wary look in her eyes stepped forward. You can't promise us change overnight, Ethan. We've been hurt for a long time by your father's decisions. It's going to take time, and we need reassurance that you won't abandon us if things get tough. He nodded, understanding her plight. I hear you, and you're right. Change is a process. I'm committed to being part of it for the long haul. Every step, I'll share with you, and I promise to listen. I'll fight for our neighborhood no matter how long it takes. He felt Clara's hand squeeze his, strength flowing from her quiet support. The crowd paused, absorbing his words, and slowly, he saw something shift. Hope began to spark in the air again. Suddenly, a few voices spoke up in quiet agreement. We're willing to give you a chance if you really mean that. A swell of relief washed over Ethan. They were willing to walk the rocky path with him. Then, like a thunderclap, another voice interrupted, but what about your father? How will you separate yourself from his mistakes if he is still standing in the shadows? Ethan's heart raced. He hadn't prepared for this. The specter of his father loomed large, ready to sink any of his efforts. I'll confront him, he stated, conviction seeping into his words. I have to speak my truth, even if it means facing him directly. This isn't just about me anymore, it's about all of us. The weight of his claim hung in the air, palpable and electrifying. Clara looked at him, her eyes wide. With surprise. Ethan. The crowd turned restless again, murmurs rising. Could he really confront the past so fiercely? Would he find the strength he needed? With adrenaline coursing through him, Ethan faced the crowd once more, every heartbeat echoing his resolve. It's time for me to own my name and show you what it can stand for. As the crowd reacted, a mixture of uncertainty and promise, he could feel the shift. But in the silence that followed, a question loomed larger than the last. Was he ready to face the man he had spent years trying to escape? And with that unspoken query hanging in the air, Ethan prepared himself for whatever storm lay ahead. Ethan stood at the front, heart pounding like a drum, waiting for the crowd's response to settle. The murmurs buzzed in his ears like angry bees, each buzz a reminder of the magnitude of his vow. He was on the precipice of something monumental, a crossroads that could change everything. Face him? Someone called out skeptically. You think just by standing there and saying it, everything will work out? It doesn't work like that. Their doubts were sharp, cutting through Ethan's resolve. Could he really confront his father? This wasn't just about making promises, it was about dismantling a legacy that felt heavier than lead. He sensed Clara's reassuring side eye. It was as if she knew his thoughts were spiraling. He took a deep breath, focusing on the faces in front of him. Yes, he replied, his voice steadying. It's going to be messy, and I know it won't happen overnight. But I've seen how hiding from my past has only shackled me. If I can't confront the truth of who I am, then I can't ever hope to lead you. A man in the crowd leaned forward, eyes narrowed with skepticism. And if he fights back? When it gets ugly? That's a big risk you're taking. Ethan felt the gravity of the situation. His father had power more than money, he had a network of favors and connections that could drown Ethan in his shadow. But if he wanted to steer this ship into brighter waters, he would need to arm himself with truth. Then I fight. For what it means to stand tall in front of you all, he answered, realizing the fierceness in his own words. You deserve a leader who isn't just a voice but a living example. As he spoke, Ethan could see something change in the crowd. Some faces softened, while others remained unsure, their doubts still flickering like candle flames in the wind. He had pried open a door, but he knew it could swing back just as quickly. Ethan, when you say fight, what does that mean? A woman with kind eyes asked cautiously. Are you prepared for the fallout? The community will be affected along with you. I am. The words flew from his mouth, solid and unquestionable. I know my father's misdeeds have tainted us all. I'm ready to bear the weight of that fallout. But if it leads to healing, if it leads to a chance for growth, I owe that to all of you, and to myself. He could feel Clara's hand slip into his, grounding him once more. Together, they shared a moment of strength amidst chaos. She stood beside him as a beacon of resilience, making him feel less alone, but just then, a voice from the back of the crowd interrupted, tinged with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "And if you lose yourself in this battle? What then? You're willing to risk everything for this?" Ethan's heart tightened. There was truth in the concern. He knew how thin the line was between bravery and self-destruction. "This is a risk I'm willing to take," he admitted. "I want to reshape not just the community, but my own identity. I won't allow his shadow to define me anymore." With those last words, he sensed the shift like a wave gathering momentum. Hope began to swell among the crowd. And amidst the collective breath held, something still nagged at him from deep within, a voice reminding him that the real battle lay ahead. "Who's going to help you? You'll need more than just words," another voice chimed in. "Action is what counts. How do we know you'll stay true?" "By showing up for you every day," Ethan promised, fueled by an unexpected fire. "I will work hard for your trust, because earning it will be my true challenge and my ultimate goal." A new energy vibrated in the air, a potential spark transforming doubt into cautious optimism. Ethan recognized that while he stood before them, there was still one confrontation he had yet to make. He needed to gather the courage to face his father. Could he break the cycle that had ensnared him for so long? Now, with the crowd's gaze fixed on him, Ethan realized he was not merely talking about change. He was on the verge of something much bigger. He was about to embark on a tumultuous journey that would force him to reconcile with the very man who had shaped his world. And as he looked out into the sea of hopeful and fearful faces, he silently promised himself that he would not falter. With a deep breath, he whispered underneath the din, "I'll confront him. I will not let fear dictate my path." With that, the question loomed larger than ever: was he brave enough to step into the lion's den and face the twisted roots of his family's legacy face to face? Ethan exhaled, the silence engulfing him like a blanket, wrapping around the tension that had filled the square. The eyes of his community were no longer just filled with skepticism, they glimmered with the flickers of hope and shared determination. They were waiting. Waiting for him to act, waiting for him to lead. Together, Ethan finally said, looking over the faces that had once known him only as the boy who ran through these streets, the son of a man who now cast a long, dark shadow. "We'll navigate this together. With honesty and open hearts." The murmurs that had filled the air began to form quiet agreements, nods of both recognition and acceptance. Clara squeezed his hand tightly, her support a tether that steadied him. She had ignited a fervor within him he didn't know existed, and now, standing at the forefront of this critical moment, he realized it was not just about facing his father, it was about reclaiming everything his family had taken from him, from this town. "I'll come back here to speak to my father," Ethan declared, his voice steady. "I'll push for the changes needed so that you can trust me." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd, their hopes daring to rise once more. "Talk is cheap, Ethan," a voice called out sharply from the edge of the gathering. It was one of his old classmates, Jim, who had seen firsthand the fallout from his father's decisions. "You say you want to be different, but words won't heal the scars your father left behind." Ethan's heart raced, but he stood firm. "I know. I understand that words alone won't heal those wounds. I am here, willing to lay it all bare. I won't shy away from the truth, nor will I run from my history. I want to be a leader you can trust because I will earn it, not just ask for it." Slowly, the crowd began to shift, a murmur of agreement spreading like wildfire. There was disbelief and curiosity, but among them, there was also a hint of unity forming. Ethan could see it, people whispering to one another, exchanging cautious glances, ready to step into a new chapter. Then, just as he felt an ounce of relief wash over him, Jim took a step forward, brows furrowing again. "Okay," he said, tone serious. "But if you're entering this battle, you're not doing it alone. We will back you up, as long as you stay true to your word. We'll hold you accountable, but you have to promise to show up." Ethan nodded, a wave of gratitude crashing over him. I promise. I will show up. This is not just about me anymore, it's about this community and the future we're building. As whispers spread through the crowd, Ethan felt Clara's warmth behind him, bolstering his courage. There was still so much to do, but he was determined to take every step with them. Let us rally together. Next week, let us hold that meeting at the community center. We'll discuss the festival that can bring us back to life, but it will also be a chance for healing and rebuilding that trust. The tension in the crowd started to release. People were nodding, voices lifting in hope, possibilities spilling like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Count me in. Clara exclaimed, her smile radiating the community spirit that fueled him. With newfound energy, Ethan rounded up the villagers, the chatter rising above the backdrop of the news anchors still reporting behind them. He could feel a shift happening, with each name being added to the list of attendees for the meeting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Ethan knew this was just the beginning. He would confront his father, but also begin the long journey of transformation with the community he had long neglected. No matter what awaited him, he would step into that arena without fear. In the days that followed, Ethan and Clara worked tirelessly, planning the festival and the community meeting. They flooded social media with information, and as the news spread, excitement built. The town buzzed with anticipation. They were no longer waiting in silence. They were finally learning to trust again. The day of the meeting arrived. And the community center brimmed with familiar faces. Ethan stepped up to the podium, heart racing but filled with purpose. As he gazed out at the crowd, he felt that electric connection again. They were ready for this fight alongside him. I stand before you today, not just as a Lancaster but as someone who belongs here, he began, conscious of the journey that lay ahead. I come with my heart, open and ready. Let us work together to build back the trust that was lost, and let us make our town the beacon it deserves to be. The crowd erupted into applause, a symphony of voices united in hope. Ethan knew it was just the first step, but it felt monumental. Change was possible. Together, with Clara and with the support of every smiling face around him, Ethan could finally feel the weight of the past lifting, making room for something bright and beautiful. As he finished his speech that day, he glanced at Clara, who was beaming with pride. She had become his partner in this journey, and he felt a surge of gratitude wash over him. There was still darkness behind him, but the future lay ahead, and he was ready to embrace it. In that moment, he realized love, hope, and action truly could transform lives. Now, it was time to take those steps together, to write a new story not dictated by fear, but bound by trust and connection. And as he looked into the eyes of the townsfolk, he knew they were a family not just in shared history but in shared dreams, ready to rise. Ethan stepped forward, heart open. Together, they would create something extraordinary. And you need to be part of this journey too. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss any exclusive stories about transformation and heartwarming journeys. Leave a like now to show your support, it matters more than you know. Comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this incredible ending. And for the love of good storytelling, share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this kind of transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to be part of this growing community. True fans know how powerful this support is, so let's do this together.